about teamwork to will not get anywhere. So we do not teach you how to rise to the occasion. We teach you how to fall to your level of preparation. A solid rest day today. Got on the weights a little bit. Just had a nice 2-mile run to kind of warm up, get it going a little bit. And, these days are important, especially after the mileage I put on my body the past couple of days, the mileage I put on my body. So it's good to give my legs a little bit of a rest. We're back on it tomorrow with probably maybe 8 or deciding either probably do 8 miles tomorrow. So all that being said, let's get into today. Let's get into today's Move Swiftly thought. Wintrapreneur Wednesday, recording this Wednesday, I believe is August 27th, 2025. And here we go again. The Mr. Shedeur Sanders media circus. Here we go again, right? After the first game, the Panthers game, there was all this talk and how he embarrassed the NFL. Yeah, he embarrassed the NFL. It wasn't these stupid-ass motherfuckers in the media talking as if Shedeur Sanders is the greatest, but it was just such a conspiracy that he went in the 5th round. Now he goes and he lays an egg, absolutely lays an egg, does not perform well at all, which, again, it happens. I'm not even, like I said after the first one, I'm not even taking shots. Half of this conversation isn't even about Shedeur Sanders, the player. It's more so about the mentality and the bullshit that's around him, to the point where there are pieces of me that hopes he doesn't do well just because of the stupid-ass people that talk about him after a game, whether he performs well, whether he doesn't perform well. It's just so much bullshit that I got to hit to the point where I've had to, the people, I'll tell you the people that I do listen to, the folks like a Chase Daniel who breaks down the film, watches the film, or even Matthew Michez, the one that played at Colorado, who was very honest, a former offensive lineman, broke down the film and is just reacting to what they see. When it comes to Shedeur Sanders, it is just the people that actually have played the game of football and been a part of the game of football for so long. The only thing we're doing is reacting to what we see. And what we saw against the Rams is a player who was not fully developed, has not learned to step up in the same mistakes he was making in college. It's the same bullshit that he's doing now. And what happens in the media with the problem, and the reason that the thumbnail is a thumbnail today, is because there's a youth football mentality that you guys are pushing on someone who is supposed to be a professional quarterback. That's the issue. The youth football mentality, to where every time something goes wrong, now it's all of a sudden the offensive lineman's fault. Now it's, he don't got the receipts, he don't got this, he don't got that. But when he does well, oh man, he's just so great. And he embarrassed the NFL. He's gonna go out there and prove everybody wrong and all this other bullshit. And that is a youth football mentality. I'll give you an example because I love telling this story, because this was back when I was a scout. I was a scout for a company named FBU, Football University, and our space was 6th through 8th grade. So we were scouting players, all trying to figure out what the best high school was to send them to, or where they wanted to go to high school, get them to camps, facilitating camps at the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade level. All right, if you've heard of FBU, you know exactly what I mean. If you haven't, just simply go look them up. But anyway, I was at a spring game. This is back when I lived in Maryland, where I grew up in Maryland. And we're at a spring game, and there were the DeMatha coaches who was scouting out some 8th grade talent. And there was so it's DeMatha coaches scouting out some 8th grade talent, but the coaches that were on the field, they were guys that were with St. John's. And St. John's is one of DeMatha's rival. Like, again, my alma mater is Good Counsel, Gonzaga, St. John's, DeMatha. In terms of those CAC schools that have become so known now, right? So anyway, the St. John's coaches sees the DeMatha coaches on the sideline at a youth football game during the spring, and one of the coaches looks and says, "Hey, they need to get up off our sideline. They need to get up off our sideline." So again, I'm watching the game with the DeMatha coaches, and as it got facilitated, the message got facilitated to these DeMatha coaches. One of the D-line coaches was about to go over there and say, "Please say something. Please say it to me." He was about to walk over there and kind of get in his face, like, say it to me directly. Don't dance around and shit and start telling this one about me and where we need to be standing on the sideline and all that shit. And then the head coach, the other coach from the Math called him down. He goes, "Look, that boy don't know nothing but some youth football." That boy don't know nothing but some youth football. All right, let's just let him do his bullshit. And the thing is, I'm bringing all that up is because when it comes to these prime sexuals out there and these people that apparently know everything there is to know about playing quarterback and playing the game of football, and you hear them talk about Shedeur Sanders and all the excuses that they make, you can't entertain that bullshit. You really can't. It becomes so nauseating to the point where you just gotta, the lesson that it teaches you as business owners is you gotta, don't give, and again, I'm dealing with it myself, so I'm not talking at you, I'm not telling you something that is gonna be easy, but you have to work towards not allowing them to get any of your energy. All right, don't put any energy into someone that just doesn't know what the fuck it is they're talking about, because that is pretty much what is happening here. Is every single, and then again, he's become a circus, and the sad part about it is you're not helping. Part about this whole thing is that message can get out to Shedeur and his people to understand all this stuff is not helping him develop, because obviously he needs some development. I think he'd be the first one to tell you, look, I'm not where I want to be, and there's tons of things I need to develop in. And all of the people in the media who keep putting this out there as if I'm part of some conspiracy, if something was wrong, if I was done something wrong, that's not helping me develop, not helping me just kind of put my head down, get where I got to get to, get better at the things I got to get better at, and do it kind of in private without all of the noise. That is not helping when there's constant media coverage about what do you mean, all that other bullshit. Again, it's not helping. So stop it. So that's my take on the situation. And, again, I'm sure there's going to be more stuff that comes up that has really nothing at all to do with football. But that's just that's just kind of the way it is as the football world is. The football world turns, the drama and the soap opera that comes with it. So all that being said, main website to check out to dive deeper into all the work I'm doing is makeyourmove.com. That's makeymove.com. One-stop shop for your team. We're getting your self-development needs. What's going on, everyone? As one Crookshank here again, back again. You're one and only. First of all, let me introduce myself to any newcomers that may be to this channel. All my regular consumers, you see I'm in a different location now. I don't fully have time to tell you why this is. Just know I'm going to get there. And I'll just say this off jump. When you're good at what you do, when you are the one that's always being talked about, when you are actually going to be the face, be the guy, take the initiative to better yourself, and be it when you're going to be a wintrapreneur, all right? It's absolutely perfect that it's coming out on a day like today, where every single Wednesday I'm explaining to you what a wintrapreneur is, a term that I coined. The fact of the matter is, when you become a wintrapreneur, when you set your mind to do things like a wintrapreneur, you're just going to have to deal with some bullshit as it comes. And the real question starts to become, are you going to be ready to deal with bullshit? Because that's the reason that I'm not doing it at where our normal location right now, is just some bullshit. All right, and I'll just leave it at that, and we'll dive deeper into that when I get more information. Trust me, you guys will get more information. So all that being said, if you're a newcomer to this channel, let me just introduce myself real quick, and then I'm going to dive into the wintrapreneur topic today, which is Joe's before X's and O's. You got to understand what I'm saying and what I'm insinuating when I say Joe's before X's and O's. Who's the X? Who's the O? There's a term in football. When it comes to football, basketball, it doesn't even matter what the sport is, and it comes to your business. And before you start strategizing and putting plays together and putting this system together and trying to put this program together and do all sorts of things that may or may not work, you got to understand who are the Joes, who are the people that you're asking to do certain things with. And that's what you get. That's going to be the takeaway from today's show. So first and foremost, my name, as one Crookshank. Like I said, I'm the one and only Move Swiftly speaker, former Division I college football player, and current 5-time, soon to be 6-time published author and educator. I created this whole brand, this whole framework, this whole mindset, this whole philosophy that's all about taking the innovative teamwork lessons that you learn on the football field and aligning them with businesses and business owners, so they have a group of employees and a staff that moves as efficiently and has the mentality of a championship high school or youth football team. That is what we do around here in the Move Swiftly world. And again, if you are a business owner, make sure you go to freeguide.makeyourmove.com. That is freeguide.makeyourmove.com. It is we work from a very, very easy to understand process here, very easy to understand formula. That's number one, establishing measurables, adding that to a professional distance, aligning those two things, and making it so that creates the productive environment that you both need and you want. You both want and you need and want. Both. You need them both. You need them both. You want and need it. You need that productive environment if you're going to get anything done, if you're going to actually get the right people and attract the right people in the first place so you can actually get certain things done. So that is freeguide.makeyourmove.com. Next thing, college football is back. College football is back, folks. I'm so pumped to have it back. What I'll be doing every single week from 11:30 to 2:30, we're hosting a live show. However, the show will be posted like at the end of the game. It'll be recorded and posted at the end of the game, where I'll be breaking down the game in a way that's going to benefit you business owners, so you see where the synergy is, you see where the parallels are, you see where the opportunities for you to grow and develop and learn how you can make sure you're bringing in the right people based on a system, based on a solid system that puts the right folks in place. We'll be just kind of making sure that connection is made for you all. It is weeklyscenario.makeyourmove.com. That is weeklyscenario.makeyourmove.com. Now, our favorite kind of people to work with around here are the folks that say, bump all that free stuff as one. Tell me who I got to pay, how I got to pay them, what it is I got to do to pay someone to pay you, not someone, but pay you, pay the company, pay the organization. So that mentality that you have in regards to how you do your job every day, how you take the energy that you bring to work and what you're all about, I want you to implement that in my staff, and I want to pay you to do it. I want to pay you to do it. If you're interested in that, if that is what you need as a business owner, simply go to makeyourmove.com. That's makeyaMove.com. You'll see the shop now button. You'll see where you can purchase copies of our book. You see where you can purchase the employee development workshop, and you'll talk about a payment plan and how all that stuff works. Simply go to hit the tab that says Innovative Teamwork and turn your business into a championship team. It is common knowledge that the best way to win in business or in life is by avoiding ways to lose. Whether you've just started a new business or you've been in business for quite some time, there's no getting around the need to hire or outsource certain elements of your organization so things can run as efficiently as possible. When you book your meeting with Aswan, he'll diagnose what the issues are with your current system and then strategically create a system in which will lead to a reduced amount of turnover or a clear understanding of the parts of your business that need to be outsourced. Boom shakalaka. All right. Now, as far as today's article and what we're going to be diving into, and I'll give you a little bit more backstory in it. Wintrapreneur Wednesday, Joe's before X's and O's. All right. Put this up on the screen here, and then we'll get this thing going. Okay, so Joe's before X's and O's. This is a concept that was brought to me, or I first learned about years ago. You know, it's funny because just last week I took a trip back to my hometown of Silver Spring, Maryland, not 10 days ago now, and I was in my childhood bedroom, and that period from graduation to me moving to Florida, which was about graduated at 22 years old, and I moved to Florida at about 27, 28, so around that 6 to 5 year mark, I was so heavy into books, like reading book after book after book by coaches and this one and that one. I mean, just reading, doing so much reading and knowledge filling. I read more books after I graduated college than I've ever read in my entire life. And there were multiple books written by accomplished coaches that have been doing it for a long time, that would explain over and over and over and over again that there's a need for Joe's before X's and O's. Before you start talking X's and O's, you got to ask yourself the question, who is the X and who is the O? Who is the person that you're planning this for? Who is the person that you want to do it with? And then can you execute? And it came true because my last 2 years in Maryland, when I coached high school football, we had an excellent offensive coordinator who had an awesome system, an awesome scheme. He had, LED boards, and he had, wrists, like they had things on their wrists. He had such a complex system in terms of what he was going to do when it comes to play calling, but we didn't have the bodies. We did not have the bodies. We did not have the people to execute what it is he was trying to do. All right. So the Joe's aspect of it is understanding, and it translates really, really well in your business, because before you start putting together programming and marketing plans and this and that, or whatever it is you want to put together, you got to start asking yourself, who is the person that I'm putting in charge of these things? And is that person ready for this role? Because I got news for you. When they're not ready, and when you don't put your focus there, you don't put your focus on who the person is, then you run into an incredible problem. You run into a problem. You run into a problem where now you're trying to play catch up. And the companies that do have the right people will just lap your ass over and over again. The same way you see a football team that just has better players and they're kicking the shit out of somebody who doesn't have the players. All right. That is what needs to happen. All right. That's what you need to understand. That's what we're going to be taking away from today. So let's get into the article. Now. Wintrapreneur Wednesday, Joe's before X's and O's. And that is a picture of an image of the great Scott Cochran, who in the process, I'm going to talk about it as I get through the article, but in the process of me writing this article, I realized that he's actually, this is the former strength and conditioning coach for the Alabama Crimson Tide, and in my personal opinion, deserves just as much credit as Nick Saban for building that dynasty that we know and that we've known for over the past couple of years as the Alabama football program, that dominant program that they had for all those years. He deserves just as much credit as Nick Saban, because he was the one responsible for developing guys, developing players. They come in and, making sure their numbers in the weight room are increased, and making sure their flexibility, their power, their strength, the way they got together as a unit, he's responsible for that. And again, in the process of me doing my research and, getting this article done, I found out that he's actually been hired as a head coach, and I believe it's West Alabama, and it's said in the article, but that guy, Scott Cochran, he's a direct example of why it's so important to put the focus on the joke. Stop getting so caught up in X's and O's and what this person, what this coach, or what this educator, what this person is planning on doing, and and then more so focus on who they're doing it with. So here we go. Why people are better than playbooks in business and in football. So we're back again on the Move Swiftly platform for another edition of Wintrapreneur Wednesday, the weekly drop dedicated to those of us who are building our legacy while still clocking in every 2 weeks. If you're new here, let's catch you up. What's a wintrapreneur? A wintrapreneur is someone with a strong entrepreneurial vision for their life, who's been fortunate enough to land a job that pays them regularly and aligns with that vision. That's the heartbeat of this platform. That's the soul of the next book I'm writing, which is book number 6. And today, I want to walk you through the concept behind it. Consider this article as a working case study, all right? That is what this article is going to be about, all right? It's literally a working case study for you to understand why you have to be the person that has it, why you have to, first of all, be the person that is more so able to do certain things. And then in terms of how you grow, you got to be able to find the right people to put in the right position. All right. So the strategy behind book number 6. So again, like I mentioned to you as regular consumers in this world, like I mentioned to you on multiple occasions, I am currently a 5-time, soon to be 6-time published author. And book number 6 is going to have some strategy behind it. It's going to be one of those things where I'm not going to drop them like the previous 5. All right. So here it is. And I'm reading this directly from the article for my podcast listeners. Dropping intellectual property today isn't like it was 5 years ago when I first released my book, Swiftly, Your Guide to Innovative Teamwork. I was still figuring out Instagram. Now I'm regular content. I'm a regular content creator on YouTube. I'm in a committed relationship with young kids in my life. I'm actively teaching and coaching. I've paid for coaching, failed forward, evolved, and now lead from the front. So the rollout for this book can't be random. It needs to be an all airtight pre-sale strategy. And more importantly, it needs to reach the right people. That's where this week themes comes in. All right. Joel's before X's and O's. What it really means. If you've ever played football or coached it, you already know this. You already know this phrase. Joe's before X's and O's. It's a coaching principle. Is a coaching principle that says that people matter more than plays. You can be a genius with the clipboard. You can stay up until 3 a.m. drawing blitz packages, but if your players can't execute, you lose. Same goes in business. Let me give you a legendary example. During the Nick Saban dynasty in Alabama, there was a famous 60 Minutes interview where his strength coach, Scott Cochran, said something that stuck with me. He said, Coach Saban brings in great people to work with. Okay, here it is. Here, this is one I want to pause right there. I got to pause right there. All right. Nick Saban gets a lot of credit. All right. Coach Nick Saban gets a ton of credit for being this incredible football coach. And a lot of people argue to say he's the GOAT, the greatest of all times. We see him right there with Bear Bryant. And, I can't necessarily disagree or argue with that point because comparing coaches is not really the best thing, or it's really not something that you can do because it's going to be based on the players. It's going to be based on how the players perform and how they execute. So technically, yeah, you can compare coaches based on win-loss records and who is good for what particular situation they're in, but it's really going to be relative. How good a coach is going to be relative based on the situation, based on the school. Like, when I coached my first year I coached, the team went 0-10. That didn't make us bad coaches. It just didn't, because the players that we were seeing and dealing with every day, these were players that didn't have male influences in the home, and they're just being around other positive male role models was a win. But just because you didn't win on the scoreboard doesn't mean there wasn't some sort of win. So it's hard to just simply compare coaches. You can't just compare coaches like that because it's relative based on what their players or what their situation is. Now, that being said, with Scott Cochran, when I remember watching that 60 Minutes interview, and I want to encourage you guys to go watch the full thing. I do believe it is actually available on YouTube somewhere in the 60 Minutes archives, I'm sure, right? Scott Cochran said, look, Nick Saban brings in some great people to work with, meaning he brings in competitors. And if you go and you just go look up some of the stories that whether it's Julio Jones or Venus or Mark Ingram or Trent Richardson or Davante Smith, Jalen Wami, the amount of players that have played in Alabama and have gone to Jalen Hurts even, right? Tua, that have gone on to play in the NFL. And Jonathan Allen, another one. I could go hours and hours just talking about the former Alabama players that have been on a podcast somewhere, that have gone on and been interviewed in the NFL, and they have said it's a competitive culture. All right, it's a competitive culture, and he brings in a group of people that understand there's a competitive nature about being an Alabama football player. Alabama, baby, there's a competitive nature that comes with walking into Tuscaloosa, and now you have a standard. So when you're talking about a Scott Cochran who's being paid handsomely by Nick Saban to develop these guys, his whole thing was they bring in great people that want to compete, they want to work hard, they want to make each other better, and it's not just on game days. It's not just during practice. It's every fucking day of the week, all 365 days of the week, where they're making each other better over and over and over again. It's in the weight room. It's on the track. It's in the classroom. It's wherever it needs to be to get yourself better. That's what it's all about. That's the mentality that they have. That's what starts happening. So, and Scott Cochran said that, he goes, Coach Saban brings in great people to work with. Going directly back to the article now. Every year, Bama would lose, and here's the point, and this is where, again, it correlates in the parallels, the things that you need to learn from a business standpoint. This one right here is big. This paragraph is incredibly important for you to let it seep in, let it staple this one in your brain right now, okay? Every year, Bama would lose assistant coaches to other schools. Guys hungry to prove their worth as head coaches, but Alabama still won. Hear me. This is actual information and verifiable information that you can look up right now. Okay, you can go look up the championships that Alabama won, that whole dynasty that they won, and you would see how many assistants that they would lose year after year after year. They would be losing assistants. In fact, I think I did a last year. It was last year when it was either last year or the year before. I can't even remember. I'm pretty sure, yeah, it was last year when I realized that it was Coach Sarkisian and Coach Kirby Smart. I think they were going for the SEC championship, right? It was Georgia going on against Texas for the SEC championship. Both of these coaches were under Nick Saban at one point, right? And I did a whole episode about how that's what happened, because Alabama was out of the playoffs and because they were out. But I was still explaining to people, look, Nick Saban is still winning because look at the amount of people that have coached under him that are still doing their thing. Look at his coaching tree. Look at all the people now that he coached, that he helped mentor, that are now head coaches and still being successful as head coaches. That's what you gotta. That's some of the things that you just gotta measure success in regards to leadership. Meaning, if you were to leave your program today, if you as a leader were to move on, can your organization still function and run without you? That's what I see a lot. I see it all the time, especially in my line of work. Is there's one person trying to take charge of everything, not realizing the detriment and not realizing how much it actually hurts the organization by you not training folks up to be great. Instead, what you're deciding to do is trying to be the person that just takes over everything and does everything, and doesn't actually delegate and facilitate and make it so people are developing. So if something were to happen to you, your organization wouldn't go with it. That's where you could learn a whole lot in terms of just college football and the ones that are successful at doing it. All right. Every year they would lose assistant coaches to other schools. Guys hungry to prove themselves as head coach, like I said. But Alabama still won every year because it wasn't just X's and O's. It was about recruiting, developing, and retaining the right people. Saban's assistants weren't just football brains. They were culture carriers, people first leaders. Cochran, who now finds himself as a head coach, and he's still, so this is what happened. So I found out while I was doing the research on this article, if you go look at University of West Alabama, go look at who their head coach is now. Go look at who their head coach is now. Okay, and he took a year off. So what happened was Scott Cochran, after Nick Saban retired, he went. In fact, I think Nick Saban was still actually coaching when Scott Cochran. He went to let me see, 50. let me go look up the year, because what happened. Let me look it up really, really quick. I'm going to look it up really, really quick. Because I think, here's what happened. So, he was the Alabama strength coach for, that is, 12 years. Over a decade, he was the Alabama strength coach from 2007 all the way to 2019. And then Kirby Smart, who took the job at the University of Georgia. And well, yeah, let's just do the math now. Let's do the math. And just look at the championship. So again, numbers aren't going to lie. He took the job in 2016. So took him some years to convince him, but he took the job. So Kirby Smart, who was former Alabama assistant, takes the job. He takes the job at Georgia in 2016. And then in 2020, he brings Scott Cochran on as his strength coach, and then you start to see the championship culture. There was a point there where it was literally just Alabama and Georgia winning championships every single year. That was the conversation. Who's going to be the winner between Georgia and Alabama? We all know. Just go look that up and understand the correlation, why they're winning, why it's constantly happening. It doesn't just happen by accident. It happens because there's a system in place that's built around developing players. All right. That's how you compete. In fact, I think was it Coach Prime who said this a couple years, not a couple weeks, but a couple of weeks ago at the media day, where he was just explaining and just keeping it all the way funky. Look, there's maybe 8 to 9 teams, 7 or 8, 9 teams that realistically have a shot at winning a national championship. If we're talking about going to a next level, we're talking about going to a national championship, then you got to understand, hey, there needs to be the developmental piece. There can't just be these X's and O's guys that are talking and, going through all these plays. And I said it, actually, I wrote that same concept in my first book, Swiftly, where it was, you never want to mistake activity for achievement. What I see in my space in the education world every single day is folks who are constantly mistaking an activity and doing an activity, and they're mistaking it with achievement. You're not achieving anything. You're just kind of going through an activity that's not leading to a result. But you can say you're doing something that's going to keep your job as opposed to actually getting a fucking result. That is the issue. And what we see with the programs that win do not allow themselves to get caught up in the semantical bullshit. They make it so everything they do, their strategy in terms of everything they do, so they know certain things get done. This is the way this Move Swiftly business is structured. Every single day, wherever you're going to have me, you're going to see me make sure there's a live recording done. There's going to be an article to match it. There's going to be a system throughout the week that constantly thrives. So when I'm not available or something goes wrong, or let's say I'm traveling, let's say I'm doing something here, all of the systems in place are going to make it so I can continue to grow. That's how you got to do things, guys. That's how it has to work. You cannot leave shit up to chance. You cannot constantly be dreaming and just talking about shit that you want to do. You can't do it. It won't work. It just will not last. All right. So final word, I'll close you guys out with this. Business owners, this is your playbook. All right. So let me pull it up on the screen now. Here's your playbook. Let's bring it back to my upcoming book, right? Book number 6. Let's take it all the way back. Let's bring it full circle now, right? This time, it's not about just putting out content. It's about connecting with business owners, especially those of you struggling with high employee turnover, team burnout, hiring people who look great on paper but flop in real life, culture confusion. The root of all these problems, you're chasing the X's and O's instead of investing in your jokes. Here it is right here, right there for you guys to see. The root of all of these problems that I just laid out, high turnover, burnout, hiring people that are great on paper, but the minute you put them out there, they flop. The culture confusion and the people just there trying to just kind of keep their jobs and all that shit. The problem is you're chasing the X's and O's. You're chasing the semantics. You're chasing the fact that there may be an activity attached to what I'm doing, but I'm not actually developing people. I'm not developing people. That's the issue. That's your, I just named 99% of you guys listening to me right now. That's your problem. You're not developing people because it takes some fucking work to do so. It takes some actual getting uncomfortable. Like I was telling you guys yesterday, it takes you getting uncomfortable. It takes you looking at yourself and calling out your own shit and then putting the people around you that are going to tell it like it is. You don't want those folks around you. You want the folks around you that are coddling you. You want the folks around you that's telling you the bullshit that you want to hear. And then you're trying to figure out why you're not getting to the results or why you're always just kind of staying afloat. Because you're not putting the people around you that are telling you the things that you need to hear to get better. So get away from this idea and this concept of just chasing X's and O's and focus on developing people, because that's when the investment starts making sense. That's when stuff starts happening. All right. Put you're focused on systems, workflows, and platforms, but you haven't built the people culture to actually make those tools work. All right. That's what this book is about. That's what Wintrapreneur is. And that's why the content I'm creating isn't for everyone. It's for leaders who are ready to prioritize development over growth alone. Final word, the right people make a difference. Whether you're on the field or in the offense, you win with people. Shout out to Pat Summit. She's always said that. You win by developing them, not just hiring them. You win by pouring into them, not just demanding results from them. You win by understanding that systems support success, but people sustain it. If you're a Wintrapreneur, you better start with the Joes. The X's and O's will follow. All right. Now, all that being said, again, anything I said, if you felt it in my voice, it's because this thing is about to go to another level. It's going to another level. The fact that I'm doing the recording here as opposed to my normal spot, it's going to another level. They've put something in me. It's one of those things where now as one has to be tested again, which again is something I'm used to. It's not anything that's new to me. It's what I do. It's what I'm all about. But now it's like the gloves are off. Let's continue to grow this thing. Let's continue to build this thing. And if you are interested, please, again, it's makeitmove.com. That's makeymove.com. If you're interested in employee development workshop and making it so you don't run into the same problem that I've been discussing, I talk about on the daily on this show, go to makeitmove.com, book a meeting with me, and we can discuss how to make it so these problems do not come up in your organization. All right. Again, main website to check out is makeitmove.com. It's makeymove.com. One-stop shop for your teamwork and your self-development needs. As one Crookshank, your one and only Move Swiftly speaker checking out. You guys continue to move swiftly. We will talk more soon.